All right. Welcome back to our conversation series on remote work. Our next pair of conversations will focus on some of the perceived challenges of remote work. My name is Ken Kahn, and I am the Director of Partnerships and Collaboration at i2i Technologies, where we help people with video communications. As always, I'm here with my friend and colleague, the person you really want to see and hear from.
I'm Roxanne Glauser. I'm Director of Marketing and Learning with i2i Technologies, and I'm very excited for this conversation, Ken, talking about some perceived challenges.
I'm going with perceived because I might argue some of these challenges as being strictly remote work. I know, shocker. I don't think I've done that before, but I might. I just might.
Okay, let's start with like 40% of remote workers say that struggling to unplug at the end of their workday is their biggest challenge. Does that seem low or high to you?
I don't know. I think it depends. How are you with unplugging at the end of the workday?
I tend to work around tasks. And so once I wrap up the task, I really do try to have something to separate my workday from other parts of my life. Take a walk, or I teach yoga as well. So something like that to create a little separation. I find if I'm not intentional about it, it really is easy to be caught up with whatever you're working on.
Yeah, I think it's easier to be more intentional when you got other things going on, right? Because it's, oh, I want to go do this, I want to go do that. There was definitely a period of my life where it was harder. A lot of my identity was wrapped up in work. That's just kind of what I was focused on most. There used to be a period of time where it would be like, okay, these are the things I want to get done. It's been years like this now where I feel like the list is never done now. And then most of the things that I'm involved in don't have very hard time limits either. There are periods where, like when we're doing a virtual conference, helping somebody with a virtual conference or something like that, when there's time sensitive things, those are times where I might work a lot more hours. But normally I can stay within that 8 to 5 boundary for the most part. I could definitely see how people could have a hard time unplugging. The other statistic we had here, about 71% of respondents said it's very important to set work boundaries. Remote workers are only moderately successful. Is that really a remote work problem, or is that just a work problem? Because now our work follows us everywhere, especially because we get a lot of that stuff from our phones. I think it's harder for people to completely turn off, even if they are driving into an office, because the emails keep coming through the phone, or they get home, they might do some things, and then at night go back to working on the computer. Like a lot of the things we talk about, that's easier said than done for some people, depending on where you work. If you have a boss or a manager that's very, you better respond, and you can't be like, hey, after 5 o'clock, I don't answer, especially too with the global nature of things where we have different time zones. And so people are like, you can't just go dark on us.
The nature of a global team, it's going to be some people are up super early, or some people are up very late or in the middle of the night. Because I was talking to a friend of mine, and his team is global. And there's one member that will attend meetings. I think it's like, he said something like midnight her time. And she happens to be a night owl. And it really works with their team because they do have a flexible schedule. And so, because she's by nature up at that time, she just attends the meeting live, and they share the recordings with the other time zones that it's not as convenient to. Even if you work for a team that says, okay, you don't have to be on, and they give you the permissions to manage your schedule and such, there's something in our brains that we just know the work is continuing, and there are things that are going on even if we're not there. So whenever you do plug back into the stream, you're going to have a certain amount of catch up you have to do. And so sometimes you're like, is it just easier to stay semi-present instead of completely unplugging? I can remember the difference of once we went to mobile devices, and how different that felt in the rhythm of the workday. And those were mobile devices plus in-person work. Now with completely remote work, I think that would be quite a challenge.
And what about loneliness? We had 50% of remote workers feel lonely once a week.
We hear a lot about the loneliness epidemic in that book by Robert Putnam of Bowling Alone, that it's increased throughout the last many years. We do need the connection. If I feel myself needing to schedule connections because all my work is remote, then to schedule things in person in my life here, that helps to balance it. So I don't know. I think that would be at least once a week because that's where I was like, are they already lonely? Or are they just like lonely when they're doing their work? Because I like to be lonely when I'm doing my work. What was your reaction to that?
Yeah, was thinking people that basically have isolated tasks and maybe live alone. I think it would be easy to get that way. And to your introverted point, too, I think sometimes if I'm not intentional, I could be alone to the point where it's not good for me. And by the time I realize it, it could be too late, kind of thing. One of the things that we did when the pandemic started was we started an intentional, okay, every afternoon, let's connect for at least 30 minutes just to touch base. And we just maintained that, which is good. So it's even if we're not talking to anybody all day long, we at least have that touch point.
I do think that is important. And as a member of a remote team or managing a remote team, to be aware of that and then to check in on your team, to get to know your team members and know how much they need the interaction. And like you said, to catch it before it can be too late, then they quit. What was it, the GitLab example where they scheduled virtual coffee breaks? Because you think of the in-person in the office, the all that incidental, and we talked about like the myth of collaboration, but what's not a myth, I think, is that going to get coffee or whatever that is, that little bit of social glue. Because as you mentioned, the pandemic, that was one of the things that I started reading about and noticing were people that did live alone, some of their interactions pre-pandemic were when they would go to the store or they're going to the gym, and these weren't their friend, but it's the barista two or three times a week you're saying hi to. You're checking in. You are out walking. You pass the same person walking a dog, and you have these little interactions. So I think that would be really important to be thoughtful the way GitLab was and to take care of your people. Because no matter what happens with the technology, and I know we talk about AI and jobs that will be lost with that, at the core, we have to be thoughtful about humans, and humans do need some type of interaction, and loneliness is a real thing.
Yeah, that was one of the stats we had about feelings of isolation can lead to loss of motivation and focus. So then it's like the work suffers because they're not getting the connection that they need.
In any of the jobs that I've had, the connection and the relationship has always been foundational. It always starts with the relationship among the students, among the participants, whatever the group is, because humans are social creatures. And you and I might not like a big, large group of people, but to have those connections and those conversations, that is so important. Part of that is for the people in the organizations, whoever your manager is, to develop your listening skills. Because we can focus on connection or isolation, but if you are leading a team, good listening skills, and especially in a remote environment, so you're not always talking over the other person as they're trying to come to their words and there's a delay in the audio, chill out and be a good listener. I think that would help as well. Do you have other ideas about things to help people not feel as isolated? Anything to add on with that?
I was going to make a comment on just the we had the 1 in 3 remote workers report their biggest struggle is they stay at home too often because they don't have a reason to leave. And one of the strategies, I have my day broken up where I'll go to the gym at lunch, So I'll get up, I'll check email from overnight, clean it out, look over what do I got for the day. I might work on some quick follow ups. Then I'll take a walk and then I'll come back, have a work period in the morning. Then I'll have the gym break. Then I'll have work period in the afternoon. And then we usually connect near the end of the day.
I like that. I break mine up a little bit differently. I like to have my walk after I've had the deep thinking, reading, taking in information time. Because one of the things I've been working on personally is to have a kind of tech-free walk. Because a lot of times I was using my walk to take in additional information. So if it's something I'm reading and prepping for a conversation we're having, or if there's something else that I've been watching and taking notes, then I'll go walk without the technology and use that as processing time and also a little connection with nature. So that helps. And I know that's not available to everyone who works remotely, depending on your role and your function. But that's what I found definitely helps me, helps to keep me more grounded, more balanced so that I can handle when things are a little more stressful or out of my control.
Yeah, and then for me too, even like the gym time, I generally go around lunchtime, but sometimes I'll have meetings or the morning work I'm doing, I might get so deep into it that I'm like on a roll with and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to continue to work. I might do that later or even push it to after work. Just having some different things to break up the day usually helps.
Okay, so as we look at some of the strategies that are essential for connection, finding a way to connect in person on a regular basis. So that may or may not be available to you with your colleagues, but you can do that, like I said, going to the gym or going to the grocery store, something where you've got another human to see a face, a real face and not a screen.
One of the things I like to do on Saturday mornings is I'll meet up with different guys that I haven't seen for a while to just catch up over coffee. So that's one of the things that I do for just an in-person connection.
There was another one on our list of to remember the higher purpose you serve beyond your paycheck. I guess in some jobs, you might be able to find a higher purpose there, but if you can't, then there are other aspects of your life that you have to kind of keep in balance with that so that the work doesn't become the
I
identity.
think that the higher purpose tip, because I think sometimes we can get sucked into the get up, go to work, come home, go to sleep, get up, pay bills. It starts to be like, why am I even doing, what's going on here? Why am I even doing this? And yeah, personally, I went through a period like that myself where it was like, what's the point of all of this? And that was a point in my life too where I was working way too many hours for way too long of a time for years. I heard a quote this weekend that I thought was interesting. It was sometimes we get so busy doing that we forget about being. And I
Mm.
was like, yeah, it's like you're doing a bunch of stuff and you start to lose focus for why am I even doing these things? Like you're just doing them because that's what you do and you get lost in that. So, yeah, I think it's important to have, if it's not like a thing where it's a daily thing, like you at least have something that can shake you out of that sometimes when you need it and you don't even realize it.
For me, it's teaching yoga. I teach 3 days a week. Whatever's going on with me, I can calm that part down and then I can interact and have a space for my students that we can practice being.
Yeah, I like to read books too. And I'll go through phases where I read more than lately I've been in a more of a reading phase. So it's like and I like to read fiction too a lot. I'll usually have a nonfiction going and a fiction at the same time. I'll usually do the nonfiction in the morning and then I do the fiction in the evening. And so that's just makes your brain think in a different way because I think that's helpful too. It's like you need to do something different than what you do for work to mix things up in your brain a little bit, have some different experiences. The only one we didn't touch on, I think, and maybe this is just more natural for people now, was the use technology tools for social interactions as well as work interactions. I think most people do some type of messaging with groups of people
Mhm.
now. For years, just because we've been in the video, and a lot my family doesn't live near me, we'll video every once in a while. We'll do a video chat. I'm not a phone call person, and it seems the older I get, the more I'm like, no phone, no talkie on phone.
Thank goodness we have other types of messaging apps and that we do have little GIFs and things like that to share or memes. I know you're very fluent in those as well. So all of those that can bring a little connection into our lives.
Yeah, as you and I have talked about before, but don't fall down the rabbit hole of doing reels for 30 minutes, which is very easy to do.
So easy.
All right, I think that kind of wraps up part one on the perceived challenge of connection. And now we'll move into our next part on onboarding.